Erica Campbell.
Hello, Tim Sohn. I've been dancing here to that music. It always gets me going.
Yes, me too. Me too. Welcome, everybody, to episode number 57. 57. I'm doing math, Erica.
57.
Yes, of Showing Up Perspectives on Cancer. This show was created as a safe space for cancer patients, survivors, and supporters come together to share their stories and connect, as well as find resources that provide healing, hope, and resilience. My name's Tim Sohn, a 16-year cancer survivor, host of Showing Up Perspectives on Cancer, and founder of Sohn Social Media Solutions. Over to you, Erica.
Oh, this way. Hi, everyone. I'm Erica Campbell. I have several perspectives on cancer. First is I am a 4-year breast cancer survivor. I am also a leader of a nonprofit helping kids with cancer and their families called the Pinky Swear Foundation. I'm a longtime cancer volunteer, and what I call myself is a cancer orphan after losing my mother to breast cancer 19 years ago. Actually, it's going to be 20 years next week, Tim.
Wow.
So it feels like just yesterday, and also feels like a million years ago. And so I'll be taking some time to reflect on that. With that, I think one of the most powerful things that we can do together is be a community. That is a fundamental part of this show. So thank you so much for joining. In the comments is where we interact with each other. Please put in the comments where you are tuning in from. So your location. I'm here in snowy Minneapolis, Minnesota. Tim, where are you now?
I'm in No Snow, Pennsylvania.
No Snow, Pennsylvania.
Yes.
And so we'd love to know where you're tuning in from and what's your connection to cancer. Also, if you see somebody else in the comments, give them a shout out, say hello, someone you know, someone you don't know. Let's begin to create that community and create a safe space for all of us.
Absolutely a safe space. So guys, let us know in the chat. I see you guys are hanging out in the chat already. Let us know if you're excited for today's guest. I know I'm excited, and Erica, I'm pretty sure you're excited.
Okay, to be honest, this woman is my new hero. I'm over the moon, and I'm deeply, deeply excited for this conversation.
Me too. Me too. So today's guest is Christine Handy. She has been a national and international model for 40 years. She's a breast cancer survivor, the Cancer Disruptor, and I'm sure we'll learn more about what that means during our conversation. And she's also author of the book Walk Behind Me, which is in its second publishing. She's also a national keynote speaker on topics that include breast cancer, women in leadership, how to turn pain into purpose, and more. And Christine also, if that wasn't enough, Christine also mentors young adults, prisoners, and breast cancer patients and survivors, as well as countless others. So let's welcome Christine to the show.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My book is actually Walk Beside Me, not Walk Behind You.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just want to clear that because I heard that and I was like, I don't want anybody to walk behind me. I want to walk beside you.
I'm sorry about that.
Okay. It's okay. People are Googling the book. Wow, see Christine Handy's book.
Right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. We so appreciate you showing up to share your story and your perspectives.
Thank you. Yeah. It's so nice to be here.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Christine. I already feel like you're a soul sister, and I think you're going to inspire a lot of women and men today.
Hopefully. So, yep. That's the goal always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
Tim, let's dive right in.
Yeah, before we dive right in, I just want to say hello to people who are tuning in. Jennifer Graves is here. She says, hello, everyone. Thanks for being here, Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer.
Yeah, she still shows up for many shows, so we appreciate all of you being here, as well as Jennifer. Mariella is here. Hello, Mariella. Mark Hageyama is here. Mark is going to be guest co-hosting with me next week when James Kiesewetter is our guest, and he's a rectal cancer survivor, so he'll be our guest next week. Chris Bro is here. He says hello from New York. So hello, Chris. It's great to see you here, and everyone who's showing up. Aaron Gibson is here. He says hello from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Oh. So thank you for being here, all of you. We appreciate it. So Christine, could you share with us your cancer story? When were you diagnosed, and then what happened next?
Yes. So I was diagnosed at the age of 41. I was, was married with my two children, and one of my kids was in boarding school. And so I got the news and had to somehow tell my children, which is tragic enough, and had to tell my son, who was in boarding school, from afar, which I'm sure was tragic for him. He was 13 years old. And subsequently, I had another issue going on at the same time with my arm. And so we had to postpone chemotherapy for a month because the cadaver bones and the cadaver Achilles tendon and the bone grafts that had just been placed in my right arm would have dissolved. So I had two major health issues going on at the same time. I was 41 and I was a self-proclaimed athlete. I was a model. And so my world was totally shattered. And I didn't have any contemporaries who had breast cancer or cancer for that matter. And all I could think of were those parties that my parents had when I was a little girl, and I'd be holding on my mom's skirt, and they'd be whispering, talking to amongst each other, saying, "Oh, so-and-so was diagnosed with cancer." And I felt that shame. And I immediately felt that shame. And I thought, people aren't going to want to be around me. People aren't going to love me anymore because I'm going to lose what the world sees and loves about me, which is my beauty. That's why I'm a model. And so all that is about to be stripped away. And now I'm ashamed. And shame is never a good feeling. So that's kind of what was going on around me and through me at that stage.
Thank you for sharing that, Christine. And I'm curious, you talked a little bit, something that comes up on this show is conversations about how we tell our children that we have cancer. Could you talk a little bit more about that? What was that experience like for you and your children?
Well, I had two sons. One was 11 and one was 13. And young boys, at least in my experience for my children, didn't know how to put words to what was going on in my life. And again, I had just had two other major illnesses, one 5 years prior and then one year prior and leading up to it. So my kids had seen me sick for a while and they were starting to resent it. And which makes sense. I was their mother, but I couldn't be their mother necessarily. Sure. And so now they were facing their mother that could possibly die. Those other illnesses I had, I don't believe that they thought it could be, life or death. And so when I told them, anger is translated, right? Fear is translated into anger. And so these boys were afraid. And so they didn't push me away, but they didn't get close, right? I have a friend who ultimately was diagnosed with a different type of cancer years later, and she had daughters, and her daughters were super close to her. They'd tend to her. They'd come to her bedside. They'd help her with, bringing food in and drinks. And my kids were like, they didn't want anything to do with me. And I totally equate that with one being boys and not able to emote how they felt and keeping it inside. And we weren't able to get them therapy because they rejected it. We offered it. They rejected it. Their little minds couldn't understand it and they couldn't cope. So it was really, really difficult for my kids. And we have since then been building our relationship back, but it definitely took major hits because of, being diagnosed with cancer.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Well, Christine, we heard in your bio that you have such diverse ways that you are showing up for people, not just other breast cancer survivors, but even prisoners and, anybody in challenge or struggle. So I guess I get to ask, what does showing up mean to you?
Well, showing up to me in my previous life, it's basically before cancer, was showing up when it was easy. And, showing up, as I always had altruistic tendencies. And so showing up in that way was writing a check. But after my breast cancer diagnosis and subsequent chemotherapies and surgery, my friends showed up. They never forsaked me. There was somebody at my house every single day to make sure I was taken care of, my kids were taken care of, my ex-husband was taken care of, and my family was taken care of, and the community that was tending to me, they always continued to show up. And so that taught me what really showing up looks like because it wasn't easy for them, right? They were not with their own families. They were giving up of their resources. They were giving up of their time, which is our greatest resource. They were giving up of, moments with their children by spending it with mine. They were picking up my kids from school. And so it's in the difficult times where showing up really matters. And so I try to show up, like, for instance, what you mentioned about working with prisoners, I wasn't around prisoners growing up or at any point in my life until after I was diagnosed with cancer. But it was one of the things that kept me up at night was thinking about how prisoners get out and are very judged. And so I wanted to get involved with the prison system after I was finished with my treatment. And I wanted to live a life of altruism. And so that was one of the things I wanted to do. And so I was able to show up in a way that, from a different perspective, to the prisoners. But I had no idea what I was walking into. I had no idea how to help them. But I knew that if I had a story of pain and survival and faith and persistence and grit and grace, then maybe they would have, maybe we could compare stories and maybe we could talk about stories and not in a judgmental way, but we could understand each other from at least those perspectives. And so it was another opportunity to show up. And so I quickly figured out that people showing up by storytelling, it collectively brings us together as a group. It's like this, or it's going into a prison and talking about my trauma, and it may look different than theirs, but it's still trauma. And so it's this belonging. It's underneath this kind of level of empathy and compassion, not pity, but empathy and compassion, where I think showing up is the most critical.
Yeah. I think I think the most beautiful part of that is that shared vulnerability that you are creating with everybody who you were showing up for. And when you are that vulnerable, you're able to then connect on such a deep level. And you said, trauma is trauma. So thank you. Right. Thank you so much for saying that.
Well, and I also think that, for me, it was modeled by my friends. They showed up for me. And so when I was finished with my treatment, they said, okay, it's now your turn. We're passing the baton. And I took that very seriously because those women really saved my life. And so I truly believe it's a privilege to show up for people. And it is messy and it is hard. But I would much rather be sitting in a hospital room with somebody, mentoring them than being at a Miami Heat game. And I love the Miami Heat. But I mean, and at the end of the day, like, that gives me joy. And I guess it's selfish in a way because serving to me brings me happiness and joy. So I'm thirsting for it. I want to do it more and more in different capacities. It doesn't mean it's just the breast cancer community. That's just one level.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's a beautiful definition of showing up. Is also almost the equivalent of giving back.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But I don't feel responsibility to do it. I feel a thirst to do it. I love to do it. It's what keeps me going.
Yeah.
It's not transactional.
That's amazing. Yeah. So Christine, you put a post up on LinkedIn the other day about how you live in constant pain, and you wrote, "My pain is later because I laugh and smile." Could you talk more about that, and how important is laughing and smiling for you during your cancer journey and other points in life as well?
Well, this isn't very flattering about me, but I was very angry when I was diagnosed with cancer. I had just come off a year of being bullied by an arm doctor, and I was very angry at him, and I didn't want to forgive him. And I just didn't know why the world was treating me badly. I felt like a victim. Yeah. And when I got over that, when I transcended that victimhood, and I decided to be a vine, even throughout the darkest moments, I decided to be a vine. And what that looked like was using courage to help other people and saying, okay, well, I'm going to show up for myself. And I don't know if I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning. There were 3 days where I wasn't sure I was going to wake up the next day because the chemotherapy was so violent to my body. And so it was in those moments where I showed courage, where I thought I can lead by showing courage even in dark moments. And that was my goal, like not just to show it to my children, but to my community and my friends and my family. And so I think that was a lightness about me. I had emptied the backpack of unforgiveness to the doctor. I'd emptied the backpack of focusing on the pain, focusing on my arm pain and focusing on the mastectomy pain. And ultimately, when I had a MRSA infection, I still have, like, they call it phantom pain, but I have weird pain in my chest, and my scars hurt and things like that. So I'm in chronic pain, especially when I'm moving around or I'm driving and things like that. So you never know when it's going to really hurt. But I don't focus on it anymore. I don't look at my arm and go, I used to look at my arm and say, gosh, it feels like there's a knife sticking in my arm. The pain was so bad. Wow. And now if it feels that bad, I just ignore it. And I laugh at something. I look at something light. I look at a picture of me as a child and say to myself, I'm going to protect you. And so I use the use of a smile, a reaction, right? It's our reaction to pain that changes our trajectory. And so I use that to lighten my load. And people who have known me throughout my whole journey, who've seen the trauma, the bullying and the arm pain I've had. If you go onto my Instagram and you go through my arm story, it'll break your heart. But it's powerful because the pictures are so powerful. And then if you go through the cancer journey and see those pictures, it's powerful. But it's all there to say that none of that has to define you, and none of it has to stop you. None of it has to paralyze you. Like for me, it thrust me into this different world of lightness and happiness and joy, because I've changed who I am. I've changed into somebody that feels joy from being altruistic versus somebody that cared so much about materialism and was self-indulgent and self-serving. And so to give up that life now was so easy, right? It just took me a while to find it. And so, it's kind of a long-winded answer, but the lightness that I show every day, I think transcends the physical pain in my life.
Yeah. And Christine, what I hear you say in that is just how much you're choosing, right? You're choosing.
All a choice. It's all a choice. Our reaction to pain, our reaction to trauma, our reaction to a diagnosis, it's all a choice.
Yeah.
We depend on it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing how much we forget how much we have the power of our own power to choose.
Yeah. And it's a victim. You're going to be a victim or a vine. It's your choice.
Totally. Victim or vine. I think that's a mic drop moment there, Tim.
Yes. Yeah. Christine, before we get to our next question, Erica, I just wanted to ask one other question. Christine, was there a certain something that happened that where you began laughing and smiling more? Was there a certain thing that happened that caused you to have that perspective?
Well, I think it was first of all, I think it was compounded by the 3 illnesses. And it was like the breast cancer was the final straw. And that could have broken me, right? It did. At first, it broke me apart. It tore everything that I believed in. It erupted it. And so I had to start from scratch, right? I was becoming a new butterfly, but I had to get to the point where everything was gone. So my hair was gone. My modeling career was gone. My family was breaking up. Everything that I thought was steady ground was now quicksand. And so, I was sinking fast, and I was angry, and I was the victim, and all these things were going on. And I didn't even want to fight anymore for my life. I felt like I was just worthless, and shame and all these terrible emotions. And so I finally got so in that mud that I was like, okay, I'm either going to choose to survive and thrive, or I'm just going to go down. I'm going to sink even further. And it was like this metamorphosis. I started to depend more on my faith. I started to depend more on my friends. I started to not be ashamed to ask for help. I started to nurture my self-esteem and say, okay, even though I looked in the mirror and I said to myself, you're not worthy, I changed that and said, I am worthy. But it didn't happen overnight. I kept saying it over and over and over again until I looked in the mirror one day and I was like, hell yes, I'm worthy. I am worthy of the greatest love. I am worthy of the greatest health. I am worthy of the greatest joy. I'm worthy of all these things that I never thought I had the capacity for. Mm. And it was like, then my whole world opened up into a world of altruism. And I was like, okay, I can serve here. I can serve there. And it was like, it was endless opportunities. And then more opportunities came to me. Like in the prison system, I was like, yeah, I think I'll start speaking in prisons. And then these prisoners would reach out to me and say, I need help. And I'd be like, how can I help? And so it's just I had to hit rock bottom, right? Yeah. And then it was my reaction to rock bottom, which in the beginning was terrible. But then after more fire, I was like, okay, I surrender. I quit. I'm just going to let God lead the way. And wherever I go, that's where I go. And I also stopped worrying about the outcome. I was so fixated on whether I was going to live or die. Once I just said, okay, well, you know what? I can't control this anymore. I can't control whether the chemo is going to kill me. I can't control whether the cancer is going to come back. So why am I paralyzed in this pain, in this emotional pain? So once I gave that up, I just lived every single day. And I lived every single day. I mean, if you watch me on social media, I am living life. Yeah. I'm not stuck. I'm not paralyzed. I'm not fear. I don't live in fear at all. That's a difference.
Yeah. Christine, this is just so, inspirational because, and also you make it sound easy, right? You hit that rock bottom and then you bounce back. And I know it wasn't.
It takes a long time. Yeah. I mean, I had a friend put scriptures all over my house and my drawers, on my mirrors, in my kids' rooms, where there are stickies all over my house. And so instead of thinking about death, I was thinking about life.
Yeah.
And then I put pictures of me all over my house. And every time I looked at a picture of me, I said, I'm going to protect you. I was tired of not protecting myself. I was tired of thinking that society was going to protect me. I was tired of thinking that my husband should protect me, that my friends should protect me. I had to protect me. Where was I in the equation? And so, so my mind shifted with all of those visuals. And right when I was diagnosed with cancer, my friends took all the things that represented death out of my house. So I was diagnosed on October 1st, and it was Halloween, right?
Oh.
Took all the skulls out, took all the things that the ghosts and the goblins took it all out, and put plants and put life and said, don't speak death in your house. Only speak life. And that's became a way of life. And of course, it's not easy. It takes practice. It takes time. It's intentional. But if you put those visual reminders around you and you put certain music on and you put certain shows on and you get rid of certain shows, like I don't watch Bravo TV anymore. I just don't watch women tearing each other apart. That's not part of my life. That's not what I talk about Bravo a lot, and I'm sorry, but I don't like what they're doing. I think women should cheer each other on to ad nauseum. I mean, constant. We should be constantly cheering each other on. Instead, people turn on Bravo and they think it's okay to tear each other apart. It's not okay.
Yeah. Christine, do you even recognize yourself pre-cancer?
I mean, don't get me wrong. I liked myself, but I was taught, first of all, I started modeling when I was 11. It was very transactional. If a photographer said, well, if you do this for me, I'll do this for you. Okay. Right. And there was a negativity to it. And by the way, I still model. I mean, it's still my career. I love it. I just did a campaign with Victoria's Secrets. I walk in New York Fashion Week. I walk in Miami Swim Week. I am still in the industry, so I'm not going to tear it apart. But, when I was younger, when I was 23 years ago or even longer, we used to get weighed in. And if you weren't the weight, if you didn't have the haircut that was on your comp card, then they sent you home. So there's a lot of shame involved and a lot of perfection. So that's what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to change old cultural rules by saying, no, I can walk in New York Fashion Week with a concave chest, and I can walk in Miami Swim Week in a bathing suit at 51 with a concave chest. And so I'm trying to get rid of those old cultural boundaries that I used to have to adhere to.
Yeah. Man, thank you. Thank you. As a woman and as a human, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Because people cheer me on, right, to do this. We all have courage, but our courage wanes. And so we have to have our courage built up, and we can do a great job of doing it, but we need people to encourage us as well. And so people like you, or, that want to share my story or say, good job, keep doing what you're doing. That's encouragement to me. So that helps me keep going. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Was there do you think there was that epiphany moment that you decided to give back?
Well, I knew after they showed up for months and months and months that I knew what that looked like. All of us were feeling great joy and a great bond. And even people that were out of our community, but kind of looking in, they would say to me, wow, you guys have this incredible group of women. They're making waves in the community. And so I said to myself, well, gosh, if we can make waves by me sitting on the couch, my friend's giving me a pedicure because I'm throwing up into a bucket because I'm going through chemotherapy. If we can make waves in the community, imagine what we can do by sharing my story.
Yeah.
And so it's powerful if you think about it. And storytelling is so powerful because it makes people feel less alone, less isolated. And we are in an isolated environment right now, especially because of COVID. And we all know what that looks like and what it feels like. And so the more storytelling, the more hopeful stories we put out there, the better our communities will be.
100% agree. I think storytelling is one of the greatest gifts. Yeah.
It is. But some people hoard their stories. Some people are afraid. Some people don't have the courage to tell them. And so there are people like us who are like, okay, no, we'll be the courage for now. We'll teach you how to do it. Because that's what we're doing. We're teaching people how to thrive after cancer, right? You don't have to just survive. You can thrive.
Thrive. Yeah. Yeah. Tim, don't you say you're a cancer thriver? Or somebody I know says they're a cancer thriver.
I use cancer warrior, but I like that also.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Christine, could you talk about, this kind of transitions nicely, when and why did you start sharing your cancer story publicly?
Well, I wrote my book which is a fictional depiction of my life, which, by the way, is not very flattering because it talks a lot of it about the life that I lived before. And but I don't believe that showing the highlight reel helps anybody. I don't believe the highlight reel helps anybody in social media. I don't believe just getting accolades from society and saying, oh, I won this award. Oh, look what I did in New York. Oh, look what I did. And oh, I did this interview. Oh, that's not the storytelling that I think is important. The storytelling that is important is saying, this is what happened. This is who I was. These are the mistakes I made. And this is how I transcended it. And this is how I move forward. And so I wanted to share my story in a book because I didn't have any breast cancer books when I was going through it. And I searched for those. There were beautiful books that people brought me. There were meditation books. There were prayer books. There were books on, grit and grace and determination, but there was not a story about breast cancer. And if you look at the movies, about cancer, the protagonist dies, which, by the way, is why my book is being made into a film, because the protagonist lives. We need more of those. We need more of those. And so I wanted there to be a book out there where it talks about the horror of cancer, the pain, the deep emotional pain. But I also wanted to talk about the transcendence and how showing up for each other, the women that showed up for me, and the faith part of my journey, and the materialism and why that went out the window. Because listen, none of that kept me warm at night. All those things that I kept close to me, like my pretty bags and stuff, none of that helped me when I lost my hair and I was sick, severely sick. That didn't help me. So I was like, why do I need these things? I don't. You can't carry it with you. I mean, you can't, there's no U-Haul behind the hearse. It's not coming with you. So it's like, why do you need it? I didn't need it anymore. And so, well, if I don't need that, if I'm not going to spend 2 hours a day going shopping, well, then what am I going to do with that time? Right. I reallocated my time. And part of that time was to work on myself. Yeah. So I'd be sitting in my bed for hours because there were times when I was going through chemotherapy where I had to be isolated. They didn't want me isolated in the hospital because there were more germs there. I was isolated in a room with a mask and, not able to see anybody. My mom was at the front door, locking the door, would not let my friends in. And that can be a lonely time. But if you take that opportunity to learn, to research, to pour into faith, if that's what you're into, or pour into prayer, or pour into, self-esteem exercises. That's what I did. And so that gave me an opportunity and the time to work on myself. And so by writing the book, then I was able to become more of a speaker, right? So I started with the book and then I became more of a speaker. And then that turned into being a social media influencer. Then I started modeling again and the rest is history. But that's how I started it. Wow.
So Christine, what I'm also hearing as the theme through all this is you're really, I think it was described to you as a cancer disruptor. Yes. So how are you changing the definition of beauty for women and more importantly for breast cancer survivors?
Well, I think how I live my life is disrupting it, for one. Because I get messages from people all over the world about how they watch me like shine and glow and smile. And I took all of the trauma that I went through and I don't carry that. It's not like it doesn't exist in my life. It does, but I don't live according to that trauma. I live according to the light that I found inside of myself. And if I can show that light to other people, maybe I can teach them to do the same. So I think I'm trying to disrupt the emotional space, but I'm also trying to disrupt this space, like you said, the beauty space, which is the only reason why I went back to modeling, because I don't need to go back to modeling. I don't need the money and I don't need really the aggravation because it's a hard industry. Yeah. But I wanted to go back to modeling because I wanted to say, yes, you can be 51 or 50 when I started and have a concave chest. You can lose your chest and still go back to your profession. Yeah. I mean, I have a woman who's in a different country who says she cannot go to work without a prosthetic. They won't allow her to. Wow. And I mean, you can't imagine the stereotypes that go on around the world. So I'm doing more and more and more. I keep modeling in New York Fashion Week. I keep going to, I'm going to be modeling in Paris Fashion Week as well, because I want to transcend just this culture. I want to do other cultures because it's important. It's important for women to feel accepted with whatever happens to their chest, whether they pick, implants, whether they take them out, whether they don't choose to have them or not, doesn't matter. They should have the right to feel good about who they are. Forget what society thinks of them. I mean, I remember when I first, my implants were explanted, and somebody on social media said, were you born a man or a woman? Because I had no chest. And I was like, why is that even acceptable? Mm-hmm. And instead of getting angry at this person, I just said to them, why would you ask that question? And they backed down, because they also don't believe that reacting with anger helps anybody, because it just stirs it up. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to try to understand why somebody would ask that, but also try to understand from people's perspective why they think that women have to have certain things. And then you're breaking down these barriers. But if I'm out there doing it, then maybe people can have a conversation, and maybe people can look at me and say, okay, if she's doing it, maybe I don't have to wear a prosthetic to work. Mm-hmm. Right. And so changing old beauty cultural values that were set in stone are now being, kind of washed away, not just by me, but campaigns like Victoria's Secrets and Dove. There's major companies that are doing campaigns with inclusivity. Inclusivity is in, exclusivity is out. And I'm here to tell you that I'm part of that campaign.
Oh, inclusivity is in, exclusivity is out. I love it. Yeah. And again, thank you.
Yeah. It's a great, I have a great job. I love it.
So Mark Kageyama has a question. He says, what was your mindset when you got diagnosed?
I gave up. I said, nobody will love me. Nobody will care about me anymore. I am not worth living. Again, because I had shame, right? Shame is a horrible feeling. For me, shame gives me anxiety. And I thought my hair is going to be gone. My beauty's going away. My kids are pushing me away. And I don't know what I have, because I was rooted on unstable ground. I was rooted on things that can be taken away. When you're rooted on external beauty, and that can always be taken away. So we can't root ourselves on things that can go into quicksand. And that's what was happening to me. I was rooted in quicksand. I didn't even know it. But now I'm rooted in altruism and faith, and I'm planted, right? I'm really planted. So nobody can take those things away from me. I can't, if I lose my hair and I lose my beauty, it doesn't matter. I have my self-esteem. So, but in the beginning, I believed that I was worth nothing because I was about to lose my beauty. And I thought, well, the world loves me because of my beauty. And now the world's not going to love me. And I cared what the world thought of me. That's the other thing. When you care what other people think of you, people can always change their opinion. So if you're rooted in that, that's quicksand as well. Yeah. So you have to figure out what you're rooted in first. And if those things can be taken away, then you might want to switch to things that can't be taken away. Root yourself in self-esteem. Root yourself in whatever faith you have. Root yourself in, well, I don't want to get into politics or, religion, but I mean, you need to be on stable ground. And so whatever that means to you, that's what you need to root in. But if it's something that can be taken away, I'm telling you, it's possible.
Sage advice. The quicksand analogy lands for me. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So everyone, we are here on Showing Up Perspectives on Cancer, and we're here with our guest, Christine Handy. And I just want to go to the comments briefly to bring some comments up that people have. Bobby Lee says, valuable advice. Don't forget your trauma, but don't let it dictate how you're going to live.
Yeah. I think emotional trauma is more difficult than the physical part. At least it has been in my life. And it's been harder for me to get over the emotional disturbance than the physical. But I also think that's an inside job as well. I mean, we can't depend on, listen, I had terrible chemo brain after cancer. And I was like, I can't really depend on the doctors to get rid of my chemo brain, because doctors are, it is a business. It is an industry, and they're there to make a profit. And I've seen that in my life. And so I was like, I'm going to take this into my own hands and fix it. So I went to Harvard, went back to school. I fixed it.
Wow, that's amazing. Erica, do you want to read this comment?
For sure. This is from Cara, who's a former guest of ours. COVID has definitely shown the world how it feels to be isolated, just like cancer patients who are limiting exposure to illness due to their compromised immune systems. It also showed the world how it feels to worry about becoming sick at any time, much like those in remission. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people live like that. I don't transcribe to that because I don't want to live in fear. I want to live in faith. And so, and those are definitely choices. I have a friend, when I was first diagnosed with cancer, I said to this friend of mine who is much older, I said, I'm so scared. When did you stop being afraid? And she goes, she was 10 years out, and she goes, I'll let you know.
Oh,
and I'll
wow.
never forget that, because I didn't want that to be, I didn't want it to control me.
Mm-hmm.
And so when COVID came and I was in the hospital for a MRSA infection, March of 2020, April of 2020, and June of 2020, I would come out of the hospital, and I live in a building in Miami, and my building, the people in my building, well, the management wrote me a letter and said, you can't come out of your unit because we don't know if you have COVID. And I was like, oh, no. I don't have COVID. I was in the hospital for a different reason, and you're not going to tell me I can't come out of my unit. And I had to have a letter written and all this stuff. And I was like, I'm not living in fear. And if you're going to live in fear, you can't push that on me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Fear is a liar, right? That's what I always like to say to myself. It's just, it can really affect you in ways.
Well, and I understand it. I understand fear. I've felt great fear in my life. I mean, I know it. I know fear too well, which is why we can't be friends.
Fear is not our friend. Fear is not our friend. Yep.
Yes. Tom Tressler sorry, go ahead.
I also don't want to dismiss anybody's fear, because I understand that. I do. I deeply understand fear.
Yeah. Yeah. We all, I mean, I guarantee everybody watching here has at some point in their life succumbed to it or just fell victim to it. It's natural, it's normal, and it's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that's why we're storytelling, so we can help people get out of it.
Exactly. So Tom asks, Christine,
Hi,
your
Tom.
sons have observed your entire journey. And Tom's the one who connected us. So shout out to Tom for sure. How have they evolved in terms of their coping, Christine?
Well, the jury is still out. They are evolving. They're 21 and 23 now. We have, gotten closer, and they see what I'm doing in the world. And it's funny. This is a funny example, but when their friends say to them, your mom is doing great things in the world, then they'll say something to me. For instance, I did this campaign with breast cancer Awareness Month with Victoria's Secret. And one of my older son's friends posted it on her social media. She's this like beautiful 22-year-old girl, young. And I've never met her. And my son sent it to me. And what she wrote was, this is one of my best friend's mothers. Look what she's doing in the world. And my son said to me, I'm proud of you. But it took his friend to post a picture of me modeling for Victoria's Secret for my son to be proud of me. Like, it's peer pressure. So, I mean, I'm, the way I live my life every single day is hopefully a testament to what they're learning. That's what I'm trying to do, right? I'm trying to model for them how to live, because I'd modeled for them other things that I'm not proud of. So I'm trying to change that. But they, I think it's sinking in. It'd be hard not to.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there's just an inherent faith we all have to have as parents that, we only see 10% of what sinks in, but that 90% actually does. And I'm certain, Christine, your kids are so proud of you.
Well, I mean, the world is alluring, right? Accolades are alluring. Materialism is alluring. Look at billboards everywhere. That's what we're being tempted with, right? Yeah. We're not being shown like, oh, look at this amazing story. Look at this amazing person who's changing lives and things like that. That's not what is alluring in our world that we live in. So to succumb that and to do what I'm doing or other people are doing, you have to have a big voice. You have to have a lot of courage to do it. And it takes time. So I am definitely putting in the time.
Yes, you are living it right now.
I'm living it.
Yeah.
Christine, in what ways do you think beauty is a choice?
Well, I used to think that beauty was an outside job. I used to think, well, if they make me up and I'm doing this great ad with whomever, and I look beautiful in front of the camera, and the photographers are telling me I'm beautiful, and my modeling agency is telling me I'm getting all these jobs, then I'm beautiful. But then I realized when I had no hair and I was 90 pounds and almost had a feeding tube and a port and a PICC line, and I was never more beautiful, because I was being flooded with people that loved me. People were showing up for me like never before in my life. And I felt so much love, and they were teaching me. They weren't just showing up and sitting with me. They were teaching me. And so I felt really beautiful. And so I realized that beauty is from the inside. It's an inside job. And that was my mistake to think it was external. And so now I talk about beauty being an inside job all the time. And people are like, yeah, you're right. But it's almost like somebody needs to show it to you or to explain it in that way so you realize it. But it really is. If we feel good about ourselves, and those are the decisions we're going to make.
Yeah.
If we feel bad about ourselves, we're also going to make those decisions, whatever that is. When I felt bad about myself, I allowed a doctor to bully me. When I felt great about myself, I was making sure doctors were taking care of me. So beauty really comes from inside.
Yes. Oof. Another mic drop moment, Tim. I love that quote. Beauty is an inside job. Yeah.
Definitely.
Awesome. Yeah.
Love that too.
So Christine, we've been reading all of your social media. You wrote a Facebook post that says, I don't wear the worst things that have happened to me. I wear the light I found inside of me. So what do you mean by this? And how did you find that light? I think it's really encouraging and appealing. So I want our listeners to learn more about that.
Well, okay. Well, let me focus on the light. The light comes from a deep faith in God for me. It comes from deep learning about faith in God for me. And it took me a very long time. I was raised Catholic, but I really did the deep work when I was going through chemotherapy. Yeah. And so I depended on that versus the world. I depended on my relationship. My measure was from upstairs. It wasn't from this world. Yep. And so when my measure became something that I looked for from God, then I no longer cared about the accolades from this world. I no longer cared about what people thought of me because I knew if I was good with God, then I was good. And so that is the light that I have. Now, people have different religious beliefs, and I don't judge anybody for what they believe in, but I think that for me, that's where my light comes from. But I also have I have a bright light because I don't carry the trauma. I don't carry it on a backpack like, well, this is what happened to me when I was 35. This is what happened to me when I was 41. And I can't believe it happened to me. I was too young and I am allergic to sugar and I should have never gotten breast cancer and all these things which are true, but they're not absolutes. And bad things happen to good people every day. Yeah. Every day. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a victim. I'm not a victim of how I lived my life. I'm not a victim of cancer. I'm not a victim of the guy that bullied me. I've completely forgiven him. I pray for him a lot. I don't want to give him the power of my life, right? I don't want to give anybody that power anymore. I gave him a lot of power. I listened to him for months and it destroyed my arm. He was more important to me than me. I'll never live like that again. Yes. Nobody can take that away from me. Mm-hmm. And so my light comes from me being in love with me. Yeah. Me being the captain of my ship. Me working on me all the time. I have an unstoppable self-esteem, but I work on it every day. Mm-hmm. And I listen to faith-based music and I watch shows I listen to podcasts that are uplifting, that serve life, not death. I don't watch anything that's violent anymore. I don't watch the news because it's paralyzing. It would paralyze anybody. Yeah. And so what I put in my head and who I listen to, who I give the privilege, right, of listening to, who I put in my life, like my boyfriend or my family or my friends, I get to choose those people. And if I have people that are talking negatively or pulling me back into a place that I used to be, I will politely and gently get rid of those people. I only want to be surrounded by people that lift me up and encourage me because, and I do the same. It's not transactional. It's just the way of life. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's where my light comes from, but it's intentional. I live a life of purpose versus just reacting before. I don't live a life of reaction and I don't live a life of transaction because I lived that before too. So if somebody says, will you do this for me? And I'll do this for you. I say, no, I'll do this for you. I don't want anything in return. And that doesn't make me a good person. It just makes me a person.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I think what I'm hearing in all of this is how grounded you have become through this experiences. And, earlier you talked about quicksand versus solid ground. And what I'm hearing is such solid ground that you cannot be affected by the winds of change or the other people or the BS or whatever. Yeah.
Well, and like I said, it's a life without fear. I'm not worried about tomorrow. I'm not worried about cancer coming back. If it comes back, I have no control over that. So why am I going to waste my worry? Yeah. So I just don't worry.
Yeah. Awesome.
Love your perspective on that. We have a
Thank
few
you.
comments here. Erica, do you want to read them?
Sure. This is from Mark Kagayama. I can hear the pain that you've been through in your life. Love your perspective and your powerful message.
Thank you. That's a beautiful comment. I'll tell you why, because it's not without pain, right? I'm not saying that, oh, it was no big deal. The chemotherapy, the arm, the constant pain, that's just no big deal. It is a big deal. But when you put it into perspective of how you can live your life and show a different version of that, that's a powerful message, right? Showing both. Yes, I've gone through great trauma, more than probably most people, right? If you actually read the story from, cover to cover, it's great trauma. But again, it's how we react. And so I love that. I love that you can hear the pain, but also hear the light.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for saying that.
And Tom says, go ahead, Erica.
Oh, no, you go, Tim.
All right. Tom says, I'm betting you aren't fully aware of the difference you're making. Many of the breast cancer survivors have had the opportunity to meet and serve are well aware of who you are. They are truly inspired by you and your willingness to share your story. On behalf of all of them, thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. I mean, because like Tom introduced us and, one person leads to another, which leads to another. And then this whole different group of people gets inspired and I give people hope. And that's what I aspire to do. So thank you, Tom.
Awesome. So Christine, what changes have you made to get your self-esteem back on track?
So I definitely got rid of some people in my life. Nicely, kindly, gently. I went through divorce, and again, like I said about that doctor who bullied me for months and destroyed my arm, I pray for him all the time. And I pray that that never happens to anybody else. And so I do that instead of, retaining anger. I love forgiveness. I try to put it out there into the world. I try to talk about it. I try to teach people about forgiveness because it really is just a backpack. That doctor doesn't care if I'm angry at him. That'll never change his life. So why would I put that toxicity into my body? And so I just let those people live freely. But instead of just doing that, I even go further and I pray for them. And to me, that's life-giving. And so if I can talk about that, if I can live like that, then maybe somebody will say, oh gosh, I've been carrying this around for a long time and maybe I could try that. And so that's one way that I've changed my life. I also used to listen to different types of music, and now I just listen to faith-based music. I listen to calm music. I listen to symphony. I listen to music that calms me down. It doesn't kind of hype me up. I mean, I have two boys. So when they were in high school, I'd have to listen to all this rap. I have nothing against rap. I have nothing against it. But for me, it wasn't peaceful.
Yeah.
And so I have to protect what I hear because obviously I'm sensitive to it because I allowed somebody to bully me. And so if I'm sensitive to bullies, then that means I need to keep them at a distance. And so, but I also have the confidence to stand up to bullies like that I used to not. And so that's just because, again, I root myself in a strong sense of faith, but also in a strong sense of self-worth and self-love. I do love myself deeply, and I do want to protect myself. And we need to want to protect ourselves. And a great example of that is putting pictures around your house of yourself as a child and just look at that child and say, I want to protect you. It'd be like looking at a picture of any child. Who wouldn't want to protect a child? But that child is you. And so I talk about that to people all the time. It's such a good reminder of how to do that exercise. And I also will only choose shows. I don't choose violent shows. I won't watch violence anymore. I will only choose shows that are peaceful, happy, faith-based, funny, give me some light. So if you surround yourself like that, and I get to show up every day to inspire people. I feel like I'm the luckiest girl in the world. Yes, I've gone through great trauma and I'm in chronic pain, but I get to show up and help people every day. I've got the greatest job in the world, whether that's on social media, whether it's on being interviewed, whether it's with my book, whether it's my speaking career, whether it's modeling in New York Fashion Week. Those are not easy jobs. Getting up in front of thousands and millions of people really in New York Fashion Week is not easy, especially because I wasn't a runway model. But I had to learn how to be a runway model. And how I did that was I put on heels every day for 30 days before my first New York Fashion Week. I used my heels in the gym. I wore my heels to the grocery store. You should have seen me in short shorts in Miami at Publix at 7 a.m. with my high heels. I'm sure they thought I was a stripper. And I was just trying to get ready for New York Fashion Week. And my feet were used to being in flip-flops. So I had to put on my heels for a month. And when I walked in New York Fashion Week, I did a great job. But I watched YouTube videos. I taught myself how to do it. And then the next New York Fashion Week, which was like 6 months later, I did the same thing. I watched more YouTube videos. I watched models do it. And when I showed up for New York Fashion Week, I'm walking with 17-year-olds. It's me and the 17-year-olds. And I'm like, I'm not going to show up unprepared. I'm showing up prepared. I'm going to do it just as good as everybody else. And I did. But that's because I showed up for myself. Showing up for yourself is wearing the heels at Publix at 7 a.m. Showing up for yourself is wearing the heels for 30 days because you want to get your legs and your thighs and your ankles and your calves ready for a walking in New York Fashion Week. It's not easy. But those things, they give me more self-esteem because they build my courage too. And I know that I'm helping people.
Yeah. Wow. I love this. There's so many like tactical and practical ways that people can build their self-esteem.
Yeah.
And also, like, thanks for pulling back the curtain. This stuff is hard work.
It's hard
It
work.
takes commitment and consistency and 30 days of wearing heels and practice. So thank you for presencing both of those.
Well, that's the thing about highlight reels, right? If I just show me, you could go look, you can Google Christine Handy New York Fashion Week. There's articles about it and stuff, and they're pretty pictures. But if I don't tell you, and again, I mean, I had blisters and my feet hurt and I had cramps and things like that. We can talk about all the other stuff. But if we just talk about the highlight reels and the beautiful photographs, nobody cares about that. That's not the story.
Yep. Yeah. So true. So true. So Christine, we always like to ask this question of all of our guests. It's a challenging one.
I know.
What is your one word perspective on cancer?
Reaction.
Say more.
I had a terrible reaction to cancer. I had a terrible reaction. I don't know. It could have been it couldn't have been worse. So I look back and I think to myself, gosh, that day could have been different. That month could have been different. I still could have been happy. I was still going to go to chemo. I was still going to go, I was still going to lose my hair. Why did I have to be so angry? I didn't. It was a choice that I made. So my reaction dictated my trauma, dictated my journey. So obviously I changed my reaction over the course of time. I went through chemo for 15 months. But for the first couple months, my reaction was anger and bitterness and victim. I was a victim. So once I changed that, then things got a lot lighter, but it was my reaction.
That's a good one. That's a new one we haven't heard. Yeah. All right, Tim, the hardest question on the show. Over to you. Your one word perspective on cancer.
Can it be 2 words?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
So it might seem a little obvious since it's in the name of our show, but showing up, because Christine's been talking about, showing up for herself, and we also show up for others, all of us, right? With all the work we do and in the cancer community. So I'm going with showing up. What about you, Erica?
Yeah. Well, it's funny, Tim. I was going to go with 2 words, but I'm going to steal this word and combine it. It's from Glennon Doyle Milton. She's a popular podcaster and writer. And so my one word is hers, which is brutal, right? It's a combination of brutal and beautiful. Because Christine, I think your story represents both.
Thank you.
Yeah. Brutal.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Thanks for being on the show. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up? We so appreciate you sharing your story here today.
I think it's so important to remember that you're worthy, and however you want to get to that place, you've got to get to that place, because you're going to make decisions based on how you feel about yourself. It's critical. Yeah. So again, I'm going to remind everybody, when I felt unworthy, I allowed a doctor to bully me so badly that I don't have a right wrist anymore. And I live in chronic pain. So you're worthy. Dig that deep into your head.
Yeah. And I think you're right, Christine, for people to always like pause and let it sink in. Yeah. I struggle with that too sometimes.
Yeah. But you'll struggle less if you keep saying it.
Yeah. Wonderful. I am worthy. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This was such an inspiring talk. And I know that the comments have blown up, Tim. So many mic drop moments. Yeah.
Yeah, there's been
I
so many comments.
Yeah, so many comments
And
from our folks. I loved her words about, moving from victim to vine, right? And beauty is an inside job. And
yes,
it's just, and how grounded she was in her own faith and her own ability to show up for others. Beautiful. Beautiful on the inside.
exactly. So, Erica, we are always looking for guests. Well, first of all, thank you all for showing up, just like you
Yes.
do every week. Thank you for
Yeah.
showing up for Christine and each other. We really, really appreciate you showing up. And speaking of showing up, if you would like to show up and share your cancer story, no matter your perspective on cancer, send me a direct message and let's have a conversation, no matter what your perspective on cancer is. And Erica, who is our guest next week on Showing Up? You won't be here, but Mark Kageyama will be filling in for you while
Yes.
you're taking some time off.
Absolutely. I'm going on vacation with my family. I will be interested in this conversation. Next week's guest with you and Mark is James Kiesewetter, who is a rectal cancer survivor. Tim, I heard he came to the in-person show of Perspectives on Cancer. So
He did.
It's going to be an amazing, amazing reunion for you. So let's all show up for James and for each other.
Yes, definitely. And thank you to everyone for tuning in to another episode of Showing Up Perspectives on Cancer. And Erica, you know what time it is? Do you know?
Time to dance, Tim.
Time to dance. Let's go.